So continuing from previous video in which we had seen how to use cron for user specific and system specific tasks. But you see, cron is a repetitive task scheduling mechanism, and that is the whole purpose of scheduling. But what if we want to execute one command or maybe a complete script, but only once in the future? So for those purposes, at can be used. It's a very handy command. And the syntax is like if we use the command at, and then we can define the time when we want to execute it. So we can do that by typing in, let's say, maybe time and then even the date. Now the standard input when this command gets executed at a certain point in time, the standard input that it takes is the input which is standard input, which is the keyboard. But at sometimes it is really not possible that you are trying to execute a command. Maybe you are trying to take input for certain commands, maybe read the command that you can use, or other such variables that require keyboard input. But what about if you want to execute a command that does not need your interference or your interaction at that particular moment? So at also has this option where you can define a file, maybe a bash script or a shell script, by typing in the flag -f and then the file name that you want to execute. So now what we'll do is that at certain point in time, this file will get executed. So let's see what are the time formats that are available. Some are even, we can use noon time, that the command will be executed at noon. So if I type at noon, you see that I have been put into this at prompt, and I can define further commands in here. So let's just get out of here. And also another option is that you can use midnight. So midnight is also a time option, and even tea time. You can use the word tea time for defining a time criteria in add command. So I can define something like at and 10 a.m. and afterwards let's say 1st of January. Let's get out of here and let's see if we have got some add commands in the scheduling. So to query those commands, if we have defined certain add commands, I can type in add query. So we have no command at the moment, and do remember that once we get out, or we want to get out of this add prompt, we need to press Ctrl D and not Ctrl C. I used Ctrl C, so the job was not installed. In fact, there was no job. I just defined the schedule of the job. So let's execute that command one more time. This is the specific point that I wanted to show you. And if I press let's say enter and now Ctrl D, we see that a job has been scheduled at this particular time. This is the time when the job has been scheduled. So if I type in at queue, this time to query if there are any jobs, we see that there are 2 jobs now, and both have been defined by myself. Now to remove a job, I can type in atrm and then the job number, either 9 or 8. Let's remove maybe job number 8, and if I do a query again, we see that now we are left with 1 job at that particular time, which is January 1st and 10 a.m. as we had defined. This add command, it does support a very complicated time specifications, and if you want to see a complete list of what it does support as far as times are concerned or dates are concerned, that what you can put in here, you can consult this document, which is in user share document, and then add command, and after that time specifications. So once you press enter, you see that you can use this token now that I just shown you. You can use AM, PM, we can use noon, midnight, tea time. Tea time is 4 p.m. and also we can define the days of the week in this format, and so on and so forth. So let's just get out of here, and let me just create an add command for you so that it will be easier for you to understand. Let's do an ls over here first. So this is the cron file that we had created. Now let's try to create an add file as well. And also let's try to do one thing. Let's try to call a file using the add command at a certain particular time. So let's do that. Let's say that let's first create the file. So I type in vi and let's call it add file. And in this file, let's create a tiny little script by typing in bin shell and then let's say echo and whatever we want to echo. So let's call it, this is add command testing. Now that's all there is to it. Let's just save it, get out of this editor, and also change the mode of this file as to be that of executable. So now it is changed, and if I type in ls-l add file, we see that this file has changed to executable file. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to turn on the add command, and in add command I'm going to use this flag which is -f to call a file, which is this one, and then the time that when we execute it. So let's just call it now. So what it should do is that it will read the contents of this file which has been called in by this flag -f, and at what time? Right at now when I press enter. And we know that in that file we have put in just an echo that should be displayed on the screen. So let's do that. And in fact, this echo will not be displayed because these commands are executed in the background. So let's change this file. Let's change the contents of this add file, and instead of doing echo, let's do a touch. If I could type it correctly. So touch, and afterwards let's create a file in my own home folder by the name of add test file, and remove this other part. So file, save it, get out of here, and now let's try to execute this add command one more time by typing in add and call in the file by using this flag add file. And now we should see that in this directory, once I execute this command, this add file that I've given in the vi editor, it should be created because we'll be executing that command. So if I press enter, we see that there is a job number 10, and if I do an ls, we see that indeed a file after this one, we see that this add test file has been created. And if we have a look at the time value, that it should have been created just now. If I show you the time, which is 17:49, and if I see ls-l add test file, we see that it has just been created at 17:49. So that's just the basic functionality of how you can use add command. You can further build upon it by going to its man page and see what else you can do by putting on complex parameters or maybe certain timelines, but really handy command for one-time task scheduling. Now moving on to the last topic of this lecture, which I mentioned earlier, which is anacron. And what it signifies that you see cron is mostly used for those tasks which are to be repeated and are used on the systems which are supposedly running on 24/7 basis. Because if a task gets missed because of improper shutdown, or maybe because of power failure, or because of any other reason, that when that cron task was scheduled, the system was not running, so task could not be performed. Now in those cases there is no recovery mechanism. So no recovery mechanism for cron jobs. So it could result a blotted log files. Now in those situations, anacron really helps. Anacron. And what it does, anacron, is that it keeps a record of programs which it should run at certain frequency or certain interval. So once the computer gets, or a PC or a workstation gets booted up, the Anacron checks its logs, and if it finds that a program was scheduled to run but was not run at that time, then it would immediately run it. So we say that Anacron is kind of supplementing the jobs that are defined in cron. And one more thing is that Anacron itself needs to be run. You can either run it using a startup script or maybe defining by a job in cron itself. But be careful that once you are defining it in cron and your systems are not of the sort of which are to be on 24/7 basis, then you set the interval of this Anacron to be run in a way that it should run, so that the functionality that you're supposed to get out of this Anacron gets achieved. The Anacron configuration file is available in etc Anacron tab, and we can edit that file and see its contents and tweak it as per our own requirements. And if you look at the syntax of this Anacron file as far as its time requirements are concerned, then this Anacron, it is not as sophisticated as cron. Like we can define minutes and number of minutes, or maybe even after minutes of interval, like I told you about static, and then maybe 10, so that this command runs after every 10 minutes interval. Anacron does not support that kind of functionality. But it does support is that it has got 4 fields, which is, one is the delay, or the first one is the frequency or the period. The next one is the delay. This period defines in the number of days, or after how many days the command should be executed. So if I define 1 over here, it would mean that the command that I'm going to define over here, like up ahead in the line, it would be executed once daily, so not less than that. And delay, that can be defined in minutes. Now what this delay means, if I define, let's say 10 over here, then this delay would mean that execute the command which is coming next after 10 minutes of the start of Anacron process. Then we have identifier, where we can put a string which identifies the command, and afterwards the actual command. So I can define that this is maybe ls command, and then we can do the ls command. So similarly we can define further periods, like maybe 10. So this command needs to run once in 10 days, and delay could be like 15 minutes. And also you need to remember that there has been certain concerns that Anacron commands should not be run at one time. So normally when Anacron commands are defined, normally there is put a delay or variation in the delay, so that not all the pending commands of Anacron are executed once, so that system does not get overloaded. So we change the delay as far as commands execution are concerned. So let me just pull up the browser and see all this stuff working on the Linux system. So here I am, and the first thing that we are going to see is the contents of Anacron tab file, which is available in etc/Anacron tab. So we see that it has given this, you can even follow, this shell and this path. What it does is that if we define the path, then we do not need to define the absolute path if we are running any commands in here. Like if we are running some command, maybe ls or maybe wd or any commands that are available in these directories, then I do not need to put the absolute path. So it's really a good way to define path once and then just put in the commands. Now if I bring it down, these are the parameters that I was telling you about regarding time, that once every day, then 5 minutes after the start of Anacron process, and then cron.daily is the identifier, and then this is the actual command that will run. It means that run parts, as I had mentioned earlier, that run parts means that run every scripts in etc cron.daily, and then cron.weekly, and then cron.monthly. We see that there is no Anacron related command which is like anacron.hourly. because I told you that it is not that sophisticated as that of cron itself. And also we can see this time syntax, that it is to be run monthly at the rate of monthly. Now once Anacron gets installed, the log file itself, which Anacron checks at the boot time that whether it has missed a task or not, that is available in, if I type in ls, then var, and then spool, and afterwards Anacron, and do an ls, then these are the files that are available. And if I do a cat of any of these files, let's say cron.daily, and do a cat of this file. Okay, so I need to do it using root privileges, which I do. So this is the specific job entry number that this Anacron has created, and based on that, once the system gets booted up, it will check that whether the task that was scheduled against this one, which we had just seen in our Anacron tab file, if it has missed those tasks, it will execute them as per the timeline defined in that particular file. So that's all that I want to tell you regarding scheduling, of how you can use cron tab for user specific tasks or maybe for system wide tasks, and how you can use add command utility to schedule a task once in the future, and also the Anacron facility that complements the task scheduling of cron itself by looking at its log files and execute those missed tasks if there are any. I hope you have learned from this video, and I would like to thank you for viewing.